All right, let's say our blessing for counting the Omer. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al sfirat ha'omer. Yesterday was the 16th day of the Omer. Since we're counting up, I'm going to guess that you can figure out what's coming next. Hayom Shiva Asar Yom Shehem Shnei Shavuot Ushlosha Yamim La Omer. Today is the 17th day of the Omer, which makes 2 weeks and 3 days to the Omer. Now we'll say our blessing for studying Torah. La'asok b'divrei Torah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu sfirat ha'omer. Sorry, la'asok b'divrei Torah. I get confused sometimes. Praise to you, Lord God, rule of the universe, who made us light with your commandments and commanded us to busy ourselves with the words of Torah. And with that, we're going to do so. Hinda, would you please read about Ahavat, Olam, and Ahava Rabba on 1 foot?
You're muted, Hinda.
Very sorry. Ahavat Olam is a prayer said in the Arvit Mariv evening service, both on weekdays and Shabbat festivals. Ahava Rabba is in the morning service. Both come after Baruch Hu, before the Shema, and are the revelation prayer of the creation, revelation, redemption arc. Thanking God for revealing the Torah to us as an expression of love, Ahava. This difference was in place for the time of the Tosafot, Rashi's grandchildren, in the 1100s. Sephardi Jews replaced the word Ahava Rabba with Ahavat Olam. Then continue with the rest of the Ahava Rabba prayer, the other Jews say. This is based on a different reading of Brachot 11b, 8-9. See also a Tosafot on this text. It has been suggested that the reason Ashkenazi Jews say Ahava Rabba in the morning is because in Lamentations 3:23, the words morning and Rabba are both in the same verse.
Okay, thank you, Hinda. So now that we know what we're looking at for this evening's class, we're looking at these prayers, Ahavat, Olam, and Ahava Rabba. We're going to start by looking at the text one piece at a time and thinking about specific questions, because we have evening before morning according to the order of creation. We're going to start with Ahavat Olam. Charles, would you read our first text, please?
In parentheses, with everlasting love, you love the house of Israel, your people. You taught us Torah and commandments, statutes and laws. Context. This is the first part of the Ahavat Olam prayer. The phrase, "an everlasting love," comes from Jeremiah 31, 2-3, where Jeremiah said that God fell in love with the Jewish people when we were in the desert together after leaving Egypt. The phrase Torah and commandments, statutes and laws is a quote from 2 Chronicles 19:10, where it is in the instruction that King Jehoshaphat gave the judges about how to do their job. How does providing rules show love? That's all. That's it, please. On my screen, sometimes the last line or two is cut off.
Nope, that's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's see. I would say that this one way that this the providing rules can show love is through God establishing order, through giving an inherent purpose to, or one of many inherent purposes to life itself, creating a task for people, an actual thing of substance for us to do, among other things. So basically him elevating our purpose in this world.
Rules also show restrictions so that people don't hurt themselves, and I think that's a way of showing love. Go beyond certain boundaries. You'll put yourself in peril.
The first thing that struck me was considering when parents love their children, you mentioned the word boundaries. That's a not more recent word that's used, but just teaching them good behavior, just teaching them what they need to do to be supposedly do the right thing, be a good person, take care of themselves, be concerned about their welfare, all the things you need to do to make sure a child is healthy and happy and well educated. And that means sometimes you don't do this and you don't do that. There's positive and negative things, or just certain habits. So I can see where the Torah has commandments and statutes and laws that would, I'm thinking that's how I'm drawing a parallel. That would be my understanding from what my experience as a father, as a parent, even more so watching my wife. So that's how I sense it.
Charles, taking a step further, if a child does in fact learn those barriers and rules, so to speak, that child draws love to him or herself. People admire and respect that child for his or her behavior. And in that sense, the child allows love to come in to him or her.
All right, let's move on to the next part. You guys have good ideas here. Naomi, would you read this next section, please?
Therefore, Adonai, our God, when we lie down and when we rise, we will discuss your statutes and rejoice in the words of your Torah and in your commandments forever. Context. The next part of Ahavat Olam, the Spanish-Portuguese version, has Vena'alos after Nishmach. Which parts of the Torah make you rejoice?
Thank you. So there are parts of the Torah that are uncomfortable, either stories or rules. And there are parts of the Torah that different people find to be good ideas. And they are glad that they are in the Torah. So even if it doesn't make you rejoice, what parts of the Torah would you say, yes, that's good, glad that's there? Either a story or a rule.
Well, it points out
good and evil. Just recently with Passover, how we were able to escape through the Red Sea, and you're rejoicing for the freedom that was given to the people. Something to rejoice, I'm guessing. Where good wins out. Lessons are learned.
I like some of the stories. I like the one where I can't think of the guy's name right now, but he's beating his ass because the ass won't go further because there's an angel with a sword in front of him, and then the ass talks back to him. So it has to do with being able to see and what God lets you see.
Yes, I think you're talking about the Olam story.
Yes.
Regarding the noise, let's try everybody muting and then unmute if you want to speak and see if that helps it. In the meantime, feel free to think about what other parts of the Torah make you rejoice.
I find it a funny question because it's sort of like each part of the Torah where you delve deeply and think about it in a different way. You could say that's rejoicing. It's thought-provoking. So it's not about jumping up and down and saying yay, but it's more in its entirety the way it's given us as a people a way to think and about the world that I guess makes me rejoice.
When Joseph was reunited with his family, it was a very happy occasion. In fact, the rabbi gave a talk not too recently about families being together. So
I think the part that there's a lot of different parts I think that the Torah itself presents that are things worth rejoicing. If I had to pick one, I actually would say the contents of its laws holistically, because together when followed properly with the system, itself is, I guess, sort of the map that we've been given to a better world. And I feel like having this through divine revelation itself is something worth rejoicing about, that we even have this. So that's what I would say if I had to pick like one out of all the wonderful things in the Torah.
Okay, let's go on to the next part. Brenda, would you read our next section, please?
For they are our life, and they lengthen our days, and on them we will meditate day and night. Context. This is the next part of Ahavat Olam. The phrase, our life and they lengthen our days, is a paraphrase of Deuteronomy 30:20, the last verse of Parashat Netzavim. In it, the verse says that choosing life, loving God, following God's commandments, and holding fast to God will lead to having life and lengthening our days in the land of Israel. Additionally, the phrase meditate day and night is a paraphrase of Psalms 1:2. That verse says that in contrast to the counsel of the wicked, a person will be happy if they delight in God's teachings and meditate on it day and night. The phrase is also an echo of Joshua 1:8, where God tells Joshua that reciting Torah day and night and then faithfully observing all that is written in it will lead to success and prospering in his undertakings. How might following what's in the Torah lead to living a longer life?
Thank you. So one way to think about this would be to approach it from the direction of what contributes to leading a longer life or living a longer life. And then can you connect any of those factors to anything in the Torah that you know about?
I don't know that it would lead to a longer life in the sense of, living one day longer than you would have if you didn't follow what's in the Torah. But it probably, or it should, give you a fuller life. And, you would get more out of the life that you're living, the days that you're alive. So I that's how I interpret it.
Who the person was who sent that message, but I think that's really truthful. If you lead a calm life, you definitely will have a lower blood pressure, and that certainly would help physically to lead to a longer life. So whoever made that statement, that was very good.
Sort of, I was just.
Yeah, go ahead.
One thing about, I pray right before the Omer word. You do as my praying for your crops and all. I don't know if we want to say specifically to live a longer life, but it gives you, yeah, you know what? It gives you a path to follow, and maybe you'll be rewarded on high holidays. And it's back to another year if you atone and do the right thing. That's from the spiritual side. So it gives you the indication that you'll be inscribed if you follow the commandments. Maybe that's a little too far out, but just wanted to say it.
Carol, the parts that we were able to catch sounded really interesting. It's a little hard to hear you, and if you put it in the chat, then we'll all be able to benefit from your idea, because it sounds like you're making some really interesting connections. Okay, moving on to the next question. Jesse, would you read this next part, please?
Sure. May your love never be removed from us. Blessed are you, Adonai, who loves God's people Israel. Context. The last part of Ahavat Olam, this is the Chatima, the signature of the paragraph that makes it count as one of the two blessings before the Shema. The Spanish-Portuguese version has lo tasur instead of al tasir and et before amo. And then, is there a question below to you? Oh, there we go. How have you felt God's love in your life?
Thank you.
In a sense, my ability and health allowed me to move from Boston to Chicago to be with my family, which is in a way also part of the hand of God, because it was a huge, gigantic thing for me to do in my life. And I couldn't do it totally alone, yet I did, because there was something else inside of me, and I suspect it was God's love pushing me.
Thank you. Other thoughts?
I think when a child is born,
Perhaps when something you pray for, hope for, and work for is answered.
So this might be this might be a little childish, but sometimes when I get up in the morning and I just see the sunrise and I'm out walking and can feel the crisp morning air, I'm just so thankful that God brought me to this day and this time. And I think that's how I feel his love.
I think that's beautiful. Wouldn't say it's childish at all. There was another note in the chat that I got as well about walking in the beautiful nature that God gave us. So somebody else, agrees with you.
I've experienced God's love in my life in all these different ways, but I think also for me in reviewing, I guess, Jewish history and seeing, I don't know, God in history, so to speak, in terms of what he has done for us throughout our history, not just in the here and now, so also the connection to our past, and things like prophecy fulfillment through different periods of Jewish history and things like that that's recounted in the Tanakh and things like that. So I guess in the whole experience of Torah study would be one of the primary ways I've experienced God's love in my life.
I also received some messages in the chat about people feeling God's love through forgiveness when they feel like they've been forgiven and have been given a second chance, and through community, through finding people who care about them and support them, whether that be family or community that they find from themselves at various times in their lives. Okay. So that is Ahavat Olam. I'm going to put it on the screen and read it so that we can see it in one piece. With an everlasting love, you have loved the house of Israel, your people. You taught us Torah and commandments, statutes, and laws. Therefore, Adonai our God, when we lie down and when we rise, we will discuss your statutes, and rejoice in the words of your Torah and in your commandments forever. For they are our life, and they lengthen our days, and on them we will meditate day and night. May your love never be removed from us. Blessed are you, Adonai, who loves God's people, Israel. That's what we're saying in the Friday evening service. That's what we're saying in the weekday evening service as well. There are some musical versions of this. This is the most common tune. Ahavat Olam Be'Yisrael Amcha. That was written by Eric Mandel, who was a refugee from Nazi Germany, and he founded the music department of Graz College. Here's a video that you can hear the tune being sung while you see pictures of synagogues from around the world. I was surprised to find out that that tune was only 60 years old-ish, 70 years old, because I guess I'd assumed it was a Sinai tune that came down with Moses from Mount Sinai, but clearly it is younger than that. There are tunes that are even younger than that. So, for instance, Gabriel Mann wrote one, which was performed by the Platt brothers. Ben Platt was the star of the Broadway musical Dear Evan Hansen, but he and his brothers grew up performing at Camp Ojai in California, and here is a video of them singing this particular tune. Debbie Friedman wrote a tune in 1973. You can see that in this video, and Craig Tubman wrote a tune in 99 as part of his Friday Night Live service in Los Angeles, which is a model that has become popular and swept across the United States and probably Canada. So these are a few of the tunes that are out there out of a small handful that exist in the world. Moving on to Ahava Rabba, the morning version. Phil, would you read this first text, please?
Sure. Okay. With great love, you have loved us, Lord our God. With great and abundant compassion, have you had compassion upon us. Context. This is the first part of Ahava Rabba. When have you had compassion on somebody? When has somebody had compassion on you?
Thank you.
I have a lot of compassion now for a girlfriend of mine who is originally from the Ukraine and still has family there. And really, it's very hard for her every day. And I try and just keep in contact with her and try to support her.
I have a friend for the last 30 years that I met at East Bank Club, and her husband was recently diagnosed with stage 4 salivary gland cancer, and she's just been devastated by it. And I call her every other day, asking her how she is, not just how her husband is, because I know she's having a difficult time making decisions about what to do. And she tells me how much she appreciates that I keep in touch. Some people just seem to forget about her, she said. So it's important.
Many years ago, I had to have some surgery and I was going to be out of commission for a bit. My children were 4 and 6 years old and I didn't have anyone to help out. And a good friend of mine knocked on our door. I knew she was coming, but knocked on our door at 5:30 in the morning that I had to go to the hospital and said, just go and take care of yourself and don't worry about your children. And she stayed for a whole week, gave up a week of work to stay home and take care of my children so that I didn't have to worry and I could take care of myself. So that's an ultimately compassionate person, and that had compassion for me and my situation. I never forgot. We're still good friends.
I got a message from someone in the chat about when this person said things that they later realized they shouldn't have said, and yet their friends still loved them and accepted them and were willing to see who they really were and not just the things that they said once. When we're able to do that for each other, we give and receive compassion.
David, I just have a question. On the bottom line on the screen, there are like 3 dots above the top. And
yes. Okay, you just muted yourself, Herb, or Morris, but I think I know where you were going with that.
Are they for cantillation?
Those are for cantillation. Yes, when you have squiggles, then it's cantillation, although it's a little unclear to me why there's cantillation in here. So actually, although those are cantillation marks, and as a trope that's called sigil, which means a cluster, like a cluster of grapes, it is both a sigil when it is the trope mark above the word and when it's a vowel making the S sound under the word, connected to the word sagol, meaning purple, because grapes are purple. Here, there shouldn't be cantillation because this is not a biblical verse. And so my suspicion, because there are dots in 2 of these letters, my suspicion is that these are telling us that the shva, the 2 dots under the letter, the vowel, the shva is sometimes a shva nach, which when it's silent, and sometimes it's a shva na when it's pronounced. And usually in the middle of the word, it would be silent. But in these cases, it's pronounced for various grammatical reasons, in 2 of these cases having to do with the dots in the letter. And so the indicators tell us that you should pronounce it as shabbatichu instead of shabbatchu, and vatilamidem instead of vatlamdem. So, sounds a little funny, but is technically correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Good eye. All right, let's keep going. Herb, would you read this next section, please?
Our parent, our sovereign, for the sake of our ancestors who trusted in you and whom you taught laws of life. So too, be gracious to us and teach us. Context. The next part of Rabba. Have you ever experienced zechut davot, something positive happening to you because of the merit of your ancestor?
I'll take a try at this one. I can think of when my father passed away and his funeral. The funeral chapel was overflowing with people. He had a series of businesses when I was growing up. You know, for those that are from the East, you know, the kind of candy store, luncheonette kind of thing. And because of the way that he treated his customers of all ages, he was just loved by them, particularly people who probably were adults when he passed away, but were teenagers when they would come into the store, because he just had a special way with them. And, you know, just the love and affection that I felt from the people is something that, you know, I would say happened to me because of him.
And also, Alan, he passed that on to you because you do all those wonderful things at the preschool with the kids. So they'll always remember you when they're grown up.
Well, thank you, Norma.
You're welcome.
He does wonderful things, not just at the preschool. Thank you, Alan, for bringing candles and all sorts of other wonderful things. But yes, Norma, he also does it at the preschool. I didn't mean to negate what you said, but just say Alan does lots of wonderful things.
All right, I'm going to shut off my camera here while I
just on the positive things, I mean, I think much of what's happened in my life, I thank my ancestors. I mean, from the heritage I come from to the parents I had and their love for so many different things that they've passed on to me. And they were well loved, and I saw that and knew that and felt the benefits of that. So this is something I feel very strongly, that much of what has been positive in my life is because of my ancestors.
Came to America because of their bravery, leaving places where they were under attack and trying to find a new life, left their families, came here, and were a result of that. Good thing.
When I came to Chicago, I asked if I could lead services at Anshe Ahmed, I think on like a holiday evening service. And because the cantor at the time, Chazan Mizrahi, knew my father, he said yes and didn't have me do it for him first to check my davening. And that felt very much like a zechut havot moment, that because of the merit of my father, I had an opportunity and I was grateful for it. Okay, I think we have time for one more section, and then I will show you what we have that you can review on your own. Norma, would you read this next one, please?
Our parent, merciful parent, who acts with compassion, have compassion on us and put into our hearts comprehension to understand and to discern, to listen, to learn, and to teach, to keep, to practice, and to fulfill all the words of the teaching in your Torah with love. Context, this is the next part of Ahava Rabba. It gets at a discussion by the rabbis about whether study or action is more important, with the final conclusion being that study is more important because study leads to action. Kiddushin 40b 8. When is a time when you have understood, discerned, listed, learned, taught, kept, practiced, and or fulfilled something in the Torah?
Thank you.
I remember one thing that happened when Rabbi Tabachnik was rabbi in our synagogue, and he wanted me to do a Devar Torah. And it was Bamidbar, I'll never forget that. And it was at a time when he was very ill. And he said, come to my house, tell me what you've written, we'll discuss it. And that was even more meaningful, doing that with him than, trying. I mean, I had done it on my own already, but the fact that he wanted to help me with this was very meaningful. And every time we do Bamidbar, I always kick myself for never having kept that somewhere so that I could read it every year. But I definitely felt like I fulfilled something that I was supposed to do.
Thank you. Other thoughts?
I think for all of us, when we had bar bat mitzvahs, we understood and discerned and learned something from the Torah.
It's true. And the bar and bat mitzvah ceremony gives the opportunity to teach something as well. All right, at this point, I'm going to show what else we have here. So we have more sections and more questions, and you can read them and talk about and think about them. Then there is the complete prayer, so you can see it all in one spot. Here is the Spanish-Portuguese translation, which is similar yet different. And we've got some musical versions. This is the most common one, Ahava, Rabba, Avtanu, Adonai Eloheinu, through Viha Erinenu, which was a tune written by Shlomo Carlebach. And the last section is Danta Atikva. That's the part where we gather our tzitzit, as if we are coming together. Here is Another tune to V'ha'er Einenu from Natalie Young. Here's another Ahava Rabba by Oana Arian. Another one singing Cantor Ben Ellerin's version. This is from Cantor Ozzie Schwartz, Park Avenue Synagogue. This is Cantor Rachel Brooke singing Anna Jacobs' version. At the time of this recording, she was the Chazan Sheni, this assistant cantor at Park Avenue Synagogue. Now she's at Anshe Emet. And here is a version by the Lemba from Zimbabwe. It's a Jewish group in Zimbabwe, and this is their tune for Ahava Rabba. Very cool, suggest to listen. And then here's a set of sources from the Mishnah, the Gemara, the Tosafot, a Jerusalem Post article about it, the Shulchan Aruch, that touches on Ahavat Olam and Ahava Rabba.